All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start us off. It is 3 after 6. Can I get someone to make a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I move that we approve.
Thank you, Fernanda. Is there a second? Thank you, Barbara. All in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, thank you. Communications with parents, citizens, and staff. In here. Okay, I will tell the board that I did receive a let's talk from an anonymous person in regards to the board member issue that we were having. And they asked me to read it, which I would not do because they would not tell me who they were or where they were from. So just know that we did receive one, and that's all. That's it. Okay. So our next piece of the puzzle here is a presentation on how our students are doing.
Yes, and so we do have a video for you that Max Berman, our current tech coach, he'll be shifting to communications next year, was able to put together on behalf of all of our building principals and administrative teams. With a specific focus on the question, how are our students doing towards reaching global ends? Principals knew to look for academic proficiency, communication, critical thinking and problem solving, global citizenship, learner agency, and well-being. So Dan, take it away. The video isn't playing. Do you want me to throw it in chat?
No, somehow it minimized Zoom for a second there.
Hopefully we get the sound.
RNESU Global Lens. 1.0. RNESU exists so that the BUU and OVUHS school districts have the leadership and infrastructure resources needed to achieve their respective global lens at a cost determined by the districts. OVUHS Global Lens. The Otter Valley Unified Union School District exists so that all enrolled students are empowered with the knowledge, skills, and attributes needed to be successful and contributing citizens in a global society by way of the resources invested by the communities. We accomplish this by empowering students in the following ends as reported out in grades 2, 6, 8, and 12. These ends are academic proficiency, communication, critical thinking and problem solving, global citizenship, learner agency, and well-being.
films with animals that didn't have the office, and then I did some research on it on my computer, and then I wrote about it right here. And I know we also accept some sentences on here, and we're comfortable on my computer to make it look nice.
catching it with the tarp? So close, so close. Let's see it. You got this, you got this. Yes, way to go. Nice. Can I interview your group? Hey. Yeah, go ahead. Beautiful. Nice. So close. You had it, you had it. Ready? Hey, what's helping your group work together best? Counting? Okay, cool. So you're counting together? Nice. Why do you think it's flinging off like that? Okay, so how you gonna fix that? How you gonna fix that problem, y'all? Okay, so you're all gonna maybe try to have the same lift off. Make sure it's in the middle. Great idea. Not bad, not bad. You caught it. Good job. Beautiful teamwork over here. Nice.
What was the flaw that you were trying to improve upon? So people that have other usage of students, for the solutions.
So Dan, you can go ahead and stop it now. You can stop the share too. I think folks online can't hear
Any
the
examples of very important things that you want to share from this year or last year?
still the movie?
Still
Okay.
the show.
So the end of the video is about 25 minutes of Mr. Ruppel interviewing OV students. So there's a bunch of 8th grade students that he talks with about the global ends and what they're working on. And then there's a group of 2 12th grade students. Actually, Padua is one of the students that he interviews as well. So I will email this to you. This will also go out in the superintendent email on Friday, and we'll also post it on the web in terms of how our students are doing. Neither Padua or Brendan were able to join us this evening, but we did ask them specifically how they thought students were doing towards reaching global ends. And Brendan said, yes, he had something that he wanted me to read for him this evening. From his perspective, it seems like students are generally doing well in regard to global ends. I don't really hear much about them in the 6 categories, but I do feel a lot of undertones of them in all of our classes. There's still a lot of work on it, but it seems like students are doing better in reaching global ends. I think 2 main things pop out as still needing a lot of work, and those are communication and well-being. It still seems like there's a large lack of communication, especially reaching out to students outside of the classroom. Many students don't check their emails because it's just a lack of investment. I don't really have a solution in mind, but it's something that still has a lot of room for improvement. Well-being is also an area that seems to need a lot. Many students are struggling with mental illnesses, so they might have to miss some school time for that reason every once in a while. For some, this can cause them to get behind and even worsen their mental health problems. Maybe teachers checking in with students to see how they're doing every so often would help. Or taking part of a class to just debrief and relieve some stress. Overall, I feel like students are doing well towards reaching global ends, but there's room for all of us to do better. And I also just wanted to turn it over. We have several of our building leaders here right now to be able to make some space for each of them to be able to just sort of answer questions, but generally sort of give an overview. How do you think your students are doing in your building, and maybe what's an area of growth or improvement for next year? Don't all jump.
Kristen, I'm happy to go.
Thanks, Vicki.
I think, so this is Vicki Wells at Neshabie, and I think, and I apologize, we missed the 5th grade, their email and my email to Max just got mixed up, so I sent it late, but they sent some pictures in of their science fair this year for both 5th and 6th grade, and it's amazing to watch. When I look at our students and I look at the community that we're starting to rebuild within the school, coming off of the pandemic, we this year have our big buddies, little buddies again. So 4th graders are teaming up with some of the kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms, as are the 6th graders. They meet, 6th graders and kindergartners meet once a week, and that has been so amazing to see those connections happen and those relationships being built. A lot of inquiry in the building and throughout the classes. I think our focus this year really has been on the social emotional learning and really taking a look at our PBIS system and our layer 1 systems of both academic as well as behavioral. What are the explicit expectations that we expect behaviorally as well as academically, really teaching to those expectations. And we have, since we are now the Neshabie Bees, we have a beehive that all of the classes work towards filling, and each of the classes, when they meet the expectations, they get a little token that goes towards a class-wide celebration. Those class-wide celebrations then get pinned to the beehive, and then we end up with a school-wide celebration. And that has been wonderful for the students as well as for the staff. And again, social emotional learning is one of those pieces that we are really heavily focusing on this year, and it's one of our priorities again for next year, is really focusing on social emotional learning as well as some of the other, the global ends around the communication, increased communication across the school with students, and rebuilding the culture and the climate that has been there that I think was pretty significantly impacted due to COVID, and the need to not only stay in your own classrooms, but kind of have your own space, and working on how to problem solve together, how to socialize together, and all of the pieces that lots of kids lost over the past couple of years. So that's kind of the focus for next year.
Thank you. Brian or Debbie?
Yeah. Sure, I'm happy to. I'm happy for that. Sorry to cut you off there. Yeah, we worked hard, and much like Vicki, when I came in just this year, talking about social emotional work. When I started, one of the first things I did, even before July 1st of last year, I interviewed every one of the staff members at Otter Academy and asked them, the same 3 questions. And one of the questions is, what are the biggest challenges aside from space? The next 2, and we've worked on the space, but the next two that I said was around were communication, school-wide communication, and behavior. So kind of what that translated into this year definitely translated into the global goals, much like at Neshabie. In a really intentional effort around PBIS to kind of respond to the behaviors in a restorative way, in a positive way, and working on the school climate of safety, responsibility, and kindness. We do that in everything that we do, and it's really, I think, paid dividends this year. If you walk through OCA, So I've been told that it's a very positive very positive climate. So we've really worked towards that in terms of well-being and providing activities, and we've done a lot of things this year. We've done so many things this year, and it's really great to see whenever we have an event at Otter Creek Academy, it's standing room only. So everyone shows up, which is awesome. And we put on pancake breakfast. So we've done a lot of communication, a lot of community pieces, and I think that goes into the climate and culture in terms of well-being. But we also do other things, like we brought the bike week, we went bowling for lifetime sports. So we've done a lot of things. In terms of goals for next year, it's really interesting. I thought a lot about our goals. I like, as a school leader, to have 3 goals that you're really intentional about. The 3 goals that I chose this year are communication, or this last year was communication, as I said, behavior and PBIS, and really promoting that vision as a nature-based learning institution. So next year, thinking about how we want to move, we're actually going to continue those school goals. Not because we've failed, it's because they're great and there's so much work to do. Why change our school-wide goals when these things lead us to our global ends and create a really positive learning environment? So that kind of leads us into, what, in terms of global goals, focusing on communication, of course, and not only school-wide, but with teachers and families, and having students think about communication as well. I think that would be a really great place for us to go. Also, we're thinking about academic proficiency and some of the needs of our students in our community. I've really been thinking about, as Debbie Alexander, my mentor, says, operationalizing my intervention system and my MTSS system. So that's kind of part of it too, not related to the 3 school goals that I mentioned specifically. And we did Trout in the Classroom this year. So in terms of that nature-based vision, we're going to continue doing Trout in the Classroom, but not as a big deal. We're going to do kind of a school-wide program that we're creating called Forests in the Classroom. And we're really focusing on our forest space and our outdoor classroom, and really moving that vision forward. And again, that leads into so many layers of our global ends. So a lot of work. We've accomplished a lot of work, but we have quite a ways to go. So that's kind of where we're going at Otter Creek Academy.
Brian, I don't know if I've ever been quoted before. So here at Lothrop, I've had the good fortune of, this is my 8th year at Lothrop. So we spent a lot of time the last 7 years on social emotional learning, and it really has become a part of who we are, allowing us this year to really focus on first instruction, and within that first instruction, also thinking about what is the first layer of intervention that we would provide in the classroom so that we can sort of pick up all of even the small bits of misunderstanding. And so what you saw tonight, in 6th grade in particular, the research project, it looks like one of the videos didn't make it in the folder. I was really pleased that the 6th graders were able to take it was both 5th and 6th grade, both 5th and 6th grade classes. When the 5th and 6th grade teachers spoke with Otter Valley last spring, they discovered that our kiddos that we sent the year before lacked in presentation skills and sort of just speaking and communication. So they worked really hard this year to embed that into a lot of things that they did. And one of the projects, there was, like I said, a little video that it doesn't look like it made it into the folder, but I gathered a couple of the learners from 6th grade actually, and they described their project, and that project included doing a research magazine. You may have seen parts of that, where they had to do all formal writing pieces that were involved in this magazine, writing sources. The kids described all of that really well. They also needed to decide, well, they chose an animal to begin with that they were going to write about, and then they created in a CAD program, they actually designed their animal and printed them on our 3D printer. So this is a really long project. Some of them were made out of clay, but the majority of them were made out using our 3D printer. And then they had a celebration of learning where they actually presented their animals and all that they learned about the animals to their families and to one another. So really, the teachers really looked at what are the skills that, you know, Otter Valley let us know we needed to hone in on, and they've really done a great job of making sure that they have given that time this year. The other portion that you saw was relating to second grade, where they have had a focus on writing this year. And I'm not sure if you were, I couldn't hear the audio. Were you able to hear the audio?
Yes. Those of us here, yes.
Yeah.
You were able to? Okay, great. So that was a second grader who on the first page was able to really describe her writing process and share that with us. And when I ran around and spoke with a lot of the other learners in second grade, they were able to do that as well. Some other things, when you think about global ends, our Edmentum data, we're in the third round for Edmentum data, but we saw great gains from the fall to the winter, so we're very hopeful for our spring data. We, thinking about critical thinking and problem solving, we have done a lot of work with digital citizenship, as well as, that's K through 6 for digital citizenship, about evaluating information critically and just finding good information. And certainly there has been a lot of collaborative problem solving throughout the grade levels in general. And I'm just going to pick apart just a few things that are known. Certainly in fourth grade, they do a unit on government. And also, I know that I can speak for Neshabe as well, Neshabe and Lothrop OCA, their Spanish teachers are just doing these phenomenal work in thinking about foreign language, and the importance of cultures, and just really understanding life outside of Vermont, outside of the United States. As far as well-being, we have had yoga and PE. During PE, we also have, I may have mentioned it last year, we had volunteers install a walking path on Lothrop. It's a quarter mile long, and we have had a mileage club that has been running since the beginning of the school year, and some of these kids have run full marathons and more, so that's been really fabulous. I think it's fair to say that the work on first instruction will continue next year. My predecessor, obviously, that will be the work for her, but it's definitely the next work for us. As I said, social emotional learning is a part of who we are. We are a Tier 3 PBIS school that is still strong in our school, and I really see Lothrop is set up to sustain the systems and structures that are put in place. I really feel great that the teachers own them, and that it will easily be able to be moved forward with our next principal.
And folks online, I did email you all the presentation, so you missed some rockin' good music for sure. Christine, I know your friends weren't able to join, but I didn't want to leave you out. Did you have anything you wanted to add on the OV side? Not to put you on the spot.
No, I don't think I have anything more to add other than we continue to work on the same things that everybody else is doing. We definitely have some social emotional work that we need to keep working on here, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And if you are able to watch, again, Mr. Ruppel interviews a couple of kids for a while, and they definitely share some of those as well. So I didn't know if folks had questions for the admin online.
Anyone? Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to put that together for us and to let us know how the kids are doing. It's a lot nicer than just seeing a bunch of Edmentum data thrown at us. So this was it's a lot nicer to see them in their day-to-day habitat, so to speak, and watching them learn. So
I have a question before everybody goes.
yeah, go ahead.
I looked up PBIS while you guys were speaking, and heard a lot about emotional and social learning and the deficits in that, I'm assuming, from COVID. And I know that you're working really hard on that kind of thing, and I know the teachers are, and I commend you all for it. How long do you think that deficit's going to last, and how much does it hurt academic performance?
It's a good question. Do any building leaders want to take that one on? Debbie?
I don't mind taking that on. I think, again, I have the luxury, I'm not sure what we want to call it, but of having the 8 years time in the seat. And I do believe that we saw a group of students, and it's actually depending upon where they were in their development, that, so for example, our current first grade class missed out on a lot of social milestones, if you will, during the pandemic. And what we saw, what we observed is that they just weren't quite where first graders were and kindergartners were. They caught up a ton this year. You know, they gained a ton of traction. So to speak to the pandemic piece, I really think it matters what grade they were in and what sort of the stage they were in their life as far as what they may have missed. You know, I look at our 6th grade class, and I would not even, like, thinking social and emotionally, I wouldn't even, you wouldn't think that there was a pandemic or anything that happened. They're like right on where I would hope that they would be social emotionally. I will say that we will, so our schools really are a microcosm of our society, and, you know, all of the wonderful things that our kiddos can be exposed to and all of the things that are hard, we see that in our schools. And I don't know, as in general, kind of taking the pandemic out, if that's ever going to go away. It matters about the systems that we are building in our school, and do we know what to do when we have a learner that has lagging skills, you know, mental health issues. It matters what our systems are able to do. So the stronger the systems that we build, the more we're able to support the learners that are in our schools that are, like I said, have lagging skills or mental health needs. Whether it's going to, you know, thinking it's going to go away, and that's not what I heard you say, it's not. It's a matter of building those strong systems so that we can navigate, you know, what each student needs when it happens.
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
It is, and again, I know how difficult it is for you, and I commend you for all this. It's such hard work. I just, I'm concerned that that social issues and conditions that are not your fault are limiting our kids' ability to learn, and I don't have a magic bullet for you or any advice really, but it's something we need to, as a board, need to be very concerned with.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? All right, well, again, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate that you took time out of your busy Tuesday evening to come see us and to show us what your kids are doing. So thanks.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Governance process. So, we are looking to see, Brenda thinks that we're projecting $176,000 surplus at the close of fiscal year 2023. They are recommending that we split that surplus 50-50 between our facility fund and our after-school fund. The last 2 years we've transferred to the facilities funds as the after-school COVID-related grants kept that fund healthy. But there are no longer any after-school grants, and they've received significant COVID-related facility grants. So, in light of that, does someone want to make a motion, and then we can talk about it?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
I have to say, I have a child in the after-school program and the summer program, and their funds are lacking this year, and they have less weeks that they can go, and I just, less staff because of funding issues, so I would definitely agree with that.
Funding? It really is.
Well, in some buildings, yes. But generally, yes, the after-school summer money from ESSER is no more.
Okay.
Is half of that surplus enough for after school then?
I mean, so Neshabie and SOAR is pretty well funded at this point, but Lothrop has their after-school. But Debbie, you're not running any summer program, right? The rec runs most of your summer programs?
Correct. Yes, the rec runs all summer.
And OCA, you have your kids club, but no summer program, correct?
Correct. We only had nine kiddos sign up, which really didn't make it
So that's part of
feasible
it.
to run it at our site, so they will be joining SOAR.
So the money will both fund summer programming, but also after school, where all sites do have an active membership. This summer, students from Pittsford and OCA are invited to attend Neshabie. So any student who does want summer program is able to do it. I don't know, Kevin, without Brenda being here, but I think she feels good with a 50% being able to keep going forward. And I think she would appreciate putting 50% to facilities.
Yeah.
One question, just two questions. One is, in terms of allocating the money, what are our limitations? So there's two places listed here to allocate the money. Is there a reason it's just these two as opposed to
So
something else?
all right, so this is how this works. We can say that we're gonna give all of the surplus back to the voters. That is one choice. Another choice is to put it in the only two reserve funds that we could possibly put it into are these two reserve funds. So it's the two reserve funds or it's giving it back to the voters. Those are our choices.
And so we couldn't give it to the schools for student activity funds or something like that? Okay.
No.
We
Yeah,
could
go
create
ahead.
a new surplus or a reserve fund though, right?
The reserve fund would have to be created by
Right.
the community, so we would have to put it on the ballot in order to reserve, to do something like that.
But you could do it for next fiscal year.
Yes,
Yep.
you could,
Yep.
yeah.
So
Right?
we don't know how much of the ESSER funds were dedicated to after-school programs in the last few years, or we do not?
Big chunks of ESSER
Yeah.
funds were dedicated to after-school and summer programs.
Well, the reason why I ask is because if, let's say it was $250,000, I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
Just throwing it, picking a number out of the hat, and we only give it $100,000.
Yep.
Because that ends up being half of the surplus. What goes away?
Can you just ask that one more time to make sure?
Well,
I
so
understand?
if the last 3 years we've been, let's say we did, 175,000, 200,000, 250,000, last 3 years, right? Out of ESSER funds that did the after-school program. And then now we're only going to have $100,000 because that's all we had for half of the surplus. What happens?
Well, we still have money for after-school programs. This is just to keep our after-school programs healthy and robust, and so we don't have to cut down hours, we don't have to cut down staff. we couldn't put more, we can't, so the ESSER fund dries up, so this is for this year, and then it's after school and summer in perpetuity, because next fiscal summer, we couldn't use ESSER anymore. So what we're wanting is the after-school programs locally count for 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock or June to August. So, yeah, so we were able to use big portions of the ESSER fund for the last 3 years. Most of it wasn't for after school, most of it was for the summer programs. And you had schools like OCA and Lothrop, which for different reasons didn't use it the same way that Neshabie and Otter Valley did. Lothrop, because they have such a robust recreation program. OCA, because it's hard to get staff, it's hard to get that many kids, it's hard to run a program. So we ended up really combining everything at Neshabie.
And so if there wasn't enough money, then that would be passed on to the parents? Because, I mean, there's a cost associated with SOAR anyway.
Right.
So,
yeah.
We're just
So
subsidizing
Are
that?
you saying if there wasn't enough money, would we add a charge to families?
Well, there's already a charge to families,
No,
so
but I mean, like, are you saying, like, would we increase the charge?
I'm just trying to understand the economics of it, that's all.
So I think I think this is what I would say is, first of all, right now our after-school funds are pretty robust. What you're hearing about this summer is that OCA doesn't have enough students to run a program by itself, so they will go to Neshabie. And Lothrop doesn't ever do one because Lothrop has their rec program that takes care of all of that. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the after-school program and the summer programs at Neshabie and Otter Valley will continue as long as we have funding. And in order to do that, that's why that's why they're suggesting to put 50% of our surplus into that fund to keep it nice and healthy, so that we don't ever have to cut programs.
And it does help the LEAP and the kids, like, during the year. It helps the after-school club.
Well, so like, for an example, I know the city of Rutland, their summer program, the price doubled this year.
Right.
And it may be for the same reason, because of money is expiring, so just trying to understand.
Right.
Their tapestry program increased that much?
Mhm.
Oh, no kidding, I didn't know that. Yeah, that is not what we're anticipating. That is certainly not what we're suggesting. We would probably go back out and look for additional after-school grants.
And that's what we've been getting recently. That's why we haven't put any more money into this, because of the grant money that we've been getting. But since there are no more grant monies, we just want to make sure that there's enough money to keep our programs going without having to cut anything. Yeah.
What percent of the enrolled student population uses after-school
After-school?
programs and summer programs?
At Neshabie, a pretty high percentage. Brian and Debbie, do you know what the percentage of students who use your after-school programs is, roughly, ballpark?
So, we have about 30 learners that are using our after-school program. So you're looking, with having 150, kiddos in our building, you've got about 20% of our kids are using our after-school program.
So then the OCA, think of Lothrop as half of OCA, so we have about 15 kiddos and about 20%. But I do have to say that for those 15 kiddos and families, it is hugely important and another source of food, and it really does make a difference in the lives of the families of my community.
And I had to help Nancy Bird once this year with phone calls when after school was canceled, and I think I called like 700 kids. So yes, a really large percentage of Neshabie students attend.
Is there still a wait list?
I don't think we have a wait list right now. In the past, we've had wait lists for summer.
There was in the fall.
I think it all opened though.
Yeah, because Payson was on the wait list and then he got in, yeah.
And I think that ends up being a staffing problem.
Yes, we had a wait list in the fall. I think that the wait list is gone only because people had to find other solutions. But a lot of it is exactly what Kristen just said, the staffing piece. In order for us to bring on more children, we have to be sure that we have the adequate staff. Otherwise, you potentially are shutting down if you don't have the staff.
So would this funding alleviate those staffing concerns or not?
No.
That's the people.
No.
There are no people.
I mean, it's the same as really everything in school. Like, we could do more field trips, we could run more extracurriculars, we could increase our hours at Stafford if we just had more staffing. So no, but what
So
this.
having more money, it's not that we can't pay more staff. I mean, that seems like you should be able to cover with whatever half of that winds up being like.
We currently have enough you currently have enough funding to fund your programs. It was about, mostly in the fall, not having the staff to fill the program. Right, like, after-school program has separate childcare restrictions. They have much tighter student numbers to adult numbers. So if we don't have the staff, we can't put the kids in there.
And this money can't go to pay additional staff? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
It could if they could find the additional staff, yes.
Yeah, my concern is, like, if we throw a bunch of money at something, that there's an inherent barrier of just not being able to hire staff. It seems like it's already programs that not everybody in the district is able to take advantage of. And so to have wait lists and us earmarking money for programs we know not every kid can participate in, that seems like a disequitable distribution of these funds.
It is.
But this is putting it into a fund, right? So it's not actually spending the money now. It's making sure that the monies are available as we move on so that those programs don't go away because they've been funded by ESSER up to this point, right? I mean.
Well, they haven't been.
Well, not fully funded, but they've been supplemented.
But if the program's there and kids can't access it, that's more what I'm concerned about. So like if there's a wait list for the fall and we're saying, okay, we're putting 50% of the surplus into a program that's serving 20% of the whole district, and then within that 20%, next fall, only 17% or whatever can even access the program because of the staffing issues. That seems...
But one hopes that the staffing issues can be resolved, and that in order to resolve them, you need the funds to be able to pay the staff.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at, which
Right.
it sounded like that's not the case.
Well, we're actively recruiting staff, but if the question is simply having dollars going to fix the staffing problems? No. But we are actively recruiting staff. And these programs, although it might be 20% at OCA and 20% at Neshabie, or 20% at Lothrop, it's more at Neshabie, and the impact for families would be significant if we lost after-school and summer programs.
How is staffing handled? Is it just voluntary with existing staff, or?
There's some staff that only work in after-school programs, but many of them work in our school system and then stay add-on. Like, we have a full-time after-school coordinator who that's her job. She coordinates the whole district.
I know several families who got waitlisted and made other arrangements that really probably weren't for the benefit of their family, but they had to do something. So it is inequitable. It's not, I mean, they're two different conversations, right? There's a conversation about the money, and then there's a conversation about accessibility. And there's probably room for improvement with accessibility. I can say, speaking for myself, that every summer is a challenge because for the same reason, there's not staffing for summer programs, right? So kindergarten year, my son was only able to do half days because he couldn't wear a mask. And the whole year, we just kept getting told, well, there'll be compensatory services on the back end of that. Well, there were no compensatory services because there was nobody to run a summer program. So, you know, this does speak to another issue that kind of, it's not financially motivated, but there's a lack of availability for help, and it leads to families making tough decisions or students missing out on opportunities because of it.
Yeah,
Can you explain the different relationships we have with Brandon Rec and Pittsford Rec?
I mean, Brandon, so Pittsford Rec, Debbie, did you want to talk about Pittsford Rec?
I can do that. So I would say that the Pittsford Rec and Lothrop School relationship is one just of us working together. We, when I say we advertise for them, we help coordinate different events that they have for them through our school newsletters and things like that. We also allow them to use our cafeteria and our gym in the summer, as well as any other time that Lothrop doesn't have something specifically scheduled to be in there. They run their basketball. They are, I believe they're going to start using our ball field. They are going to, they're running a soccer clinic on early release days so that, children could use that as childcare if they wish to. Some are. And so it's really just a relationship where they use a lot of our facilities and we help them coordinate some of the activities that are going on that serve our children.
And that's pretty similar to Brandon Rec. When we first started the ESSER-funded summer programs, Brandon Rec came into Neshabie School and actually ran their summer camps in school alongside like summer recovery programs. So they had their staff in the building while our staff was in the building doing some academic recovery. I don't think they're doing it that way this year, but they still use facilities.
The reason I'm asking is maybe I misunderstood, but it sounded like we're not running any programs at Lothrop because of Pittsford Rec's
I think because very few students, I think it was similar to OCA, right, Debbie, that they had so many students who used Pittsford Rec as what they wanted to do in the summer, that there wasn't enough to run a full site at Lothrop.
Pittsford has a pretty robust summer program for kids.
Yeah, but I would point out too that doesn't work for special needs kids.
Well, and EYS and those sort of summer programs are always going to be different from recreation as well. I mean, and as you said, Brett, there is definitely room for improvement. Some of it is related to staffing, but much of it isn't. Absolutely.
And we have, I will say that when we have run small programs at Lothrop, we've worked really closely with the rec, where kids have come over to our building for some intervention services, and then they head over to the rec afterwards. Jen Pop works really close with us. Does it provide for everyone? As Brett said, there's room for improvement there to make sure that we're supporting everyone.
Other questions?
And I do think if you decide to do this, it allows more flexibility to get better at the programs. We're definitely hearing that there's a need to provide more after school and in the summer.
So I do have one question. This isn't fiscally limited, right? Like, it isn't that you have to spend all this money by next year. This is a fund that can roll from
Yes,
year to
that's
year.
exactly
So that's an advantage, because then you can have more flexibility. If it doesn't work one year, you can still hold
It's
the
just like our
funds.
facilities
Yeah,
funds. It acts
so-
the same way.
Right.
And I believe in the years past, I don't remember what the value of the fund is recently, but usually we like to keep at least 2 years worth of funds available.
Right.
So that we always know what's coming down the pipe.
That allows for some problem fixing.
Right.
To have that flexibility.
You kind of just answered this, but not 100%. How far out is our facilities fund funded? I'm thinking, so if access is a problem and could throwing more money at it be a solution, do we just throw all of this money at after-school programs and try to like really revamp them and fix it, or does this 50% have to go to facilities? As I remember, it seemed like facilities were okay for a while.
Well, you never know. I mean, we could have a boiler blow and completely take out our facility fund. I mean, we just don't know that. What we usually, I'm not gonna say what we usually do, but, I don't think throwing all of this money into the after-school program is going to fix it, or fix the issues that are within it. I think that has to come, organically. It can't just be that, oh, we threw all the money in there, so now fix the program. I think that just has to happen. What it sounds to me like is that if the administration is saying do 50-50, because in the past we've done 75-25, we've, done whatever you want to do, depends on what you want to do with facilities. It depends on how much we really need to run our after-school programs. But if they're saying 50-50, then both funds are theoretically okay right now, but we want to keep them both robust.
We just approved like $500,000 out of the facilities fund, so.
Yes, we did.
We're only talking about putting, I don't know, was it
80, like 80 back into it
Yeah.
roughly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound great.
No. And actually, I'm surprised we have a surplus, so kudos to the administration for making sure that happened. So, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All of those in favor of the motion to approve 50% of the year-end surplus to go to the facility fund and 50% to go to the after-school program signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right. Next, Stafford Tech update.
So I have a handout, low tech, so people online aren't going to be able to see it, but it's all drawn from two public documents. One is the numbers are the most recent numbers from Stafford, and the other, almost everything else I say is in the state CTE study, and I sent Charlene a link for that, and you can look it up. It's the study that went to the legislature about a month ago or so. It's out there all over the place. So let me go for that. So the good news about Stafford is that it's very well run and the program seems to be extremely successful. The bad news is that it doesn't come close to meeting the needs of the students in its catchment district, which are 11 high schools, including ours. And so I've got the totals from May of 2023, this month. The capacity for all programs at Stafford is 296 students. There's a wait list of 86 students. There were 375 first choice applications. That is people saying, this is the program I want to be in. And they got a second choice as well. So there's an additional 200 or so second choice applications. So the total of applications is 613. So Stafford, by definition in this, cannot meet the needs of all the students who want to go there. And the Stafford board's discussed multiple times the difficulty of reaching all the students who may want to go there, kids whose parents don't have their act together enough to help them with their applications, kids who stuff the applications in their backpacks and forget to follow up, children that are too shy to come to the meetings, people who have conflicts during the different meetings. There's all sorts of reasons why people who may be interested in Stafford don't apply. So these numbers are actually worse than they look even here. I'm going to break it down to a couple of programs. I'll just do a couple of the ones who are the most popular. Where are we? So, 36 applicants for 14 spots in auto body, 35 applicants for 13 spots in culinary arts, 68 for 24 spots in electrical and plumbing, 35 for 14 spots in health careers, 65 for 21 spots in welding and metal fabrication. So if we just took welding and metal fabrication as one example, it's harder to get into the Stafford welding and metal fabrication program than it is to get into UVM. Almost twice as hard. So there's a big problem with accessibility, which leads us to our issues. So I'm going to run through very quickly some of the conclusions in the state CTE study. This is from their executive summary. The first two are about funding, but I think they apply to us. Number one, provide additional funding and incentives or grants to create more accessibility for students whose sending high school is not on a shared campus with a CTE center. That's us. Two, create a facilities funding system for CTE programs to address current facilities deficiencies. As you know, this is my favorite topic. The state recognizes that the facilities for CTE education are lacking, and in our case, lacking badly. Moving on, the system should focus on updating facilities and growing capacity for the programs most needed for workforce development in the state. And this study also talks about the need that everybody knows in Vermont, that in the future we need more skilled people doing the trades. For policy, they say that that the state needs to review CTE teacher preparation and licensure requirements and salary policies with the aim of attracting high-skilled industry professionals to teaching. What this is kind of saying backwards is there aren't enough people to do this, that it's very hard to attract people because they make less money. You have to like high school kids, or you can't do these jobs. It's difficult to get people and to retain them because there's always the temptation of earning more elsewhere. We happen to have a great CTE teacher in our high school. Retaining and adding more is a very difficult problem. Third category they have is called state capacity. And it says that there's a need to invest in additional staffing at AOE to provide to CTE educators across program areas and to increase program quality, monitor the system, and to help ensure equity of CTE opportunity across the state. Now, the last phrase is the one I'm interested in here. Equity of CTE opportunity across the state. It's a big problem. Obviously, places like the Northeast Kingdom, you can see why the issues would be there, the thinly spread out population. And it's also a problem in the sense of opportunity for kids who have difficulty accessing the program that I described earlier. Just the sheer numbers of people trying to get into the programs, and the fact that that people from poorer families have trouble getting into these things and succeeding in them. So in all of those ways, equity is a huge issue. And then the next issue was number 7 in the state capacity conclusions. Is that the state should require that career exploration be offered to all middle school students across the state to increase awareness of CTE offerings as students enter high school. In other words, to start early and to get kids interested early and to gauge their interests early and to move them into the system. That's a big issue as well. A lot of kids catch on later that they want to be doing this, and in some cases it's too late for them to start. Mr. Karpak, his Roland Fellowship project is about this streamlining and making sure that this access to kids beginning as early as 7th grade to this system. So then this last part is all me, nothing to do with anybody at the state or any official figures. I took a trip a couple of weeks ago up to Beta Technologies in Burlington. It was a great privilege. The things they're doing are incredible. And if we want that type of future for Vermont and for our students, CTE is the way to go. And I want to add that for those of you who don't know, probably most of you do, but I have a very traditional liberal arts education, and it is a great benefit to my life. But I believe that CTE is the future. It seems to be what a tremendous segment of our population wants and needs. The state seems to need it terribly, and I think we need to embrace it as the future. My second conclusion is tech centers are at capacity. Well, that's not a conclusion, that's just a fact. While serving less than half of the students who desire CTE education. And because of that, I think, the state's not going to provide the adequate funding that would be ideal. I think we can pretty much bet on that. And that means more of the burden is going to be shifted to the high schools. And under the current model, retaining CTE students in our high schools will help us with our funding. That might change, but we don't know. 4th, 9th, and 10th grade CTE foundational and preparatory programs are the responsibilities of the high schools, or will be, I think. And we certainly need that with our kids here. 5th, CTE needs more funding at the local level, that is by local school boards such as ours, as well as the state level. And then lastly, that this is an equity issue. There's an implicit bias favoring college-bound students inherent in our system. I don't think that's deliberate on anybody's part, but I think it's true. And we have to break that mindset. And so once again, I would urge the rest of us as a board, all of us as a board, to think about funding CTE at much higher levels than we've done in the past. It's inadequate, we all know it, and we need to change it. Personally, if I could bond $10 million to build a CTE wing on the high school, and I could talk the rest of you into it, I'd do it in a second. That's it, thank you, and that's our report.
I have a question. I think this is useful information, but I'd love to know how our OV kids are doing. How many are graduating? How many are going into jobs? Like specific information about Stafford. Because this is about CTE, and I hear that, but I would love to know about Stafford and how the programming's doing. And to me, this seems great, right? The numbers seem like a positive and not necessarily a negative. So I'd like to hear about some of the programs and how they're doing and how our kids are doing at Stafford.
So you would like a Stafford update on how our kids are doing and where they're going after graduation. That's what I'm hearing from you.
OV-specific stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I will tell you that next year we have 57 OB students going to be at Stafford.
How many at Middlebury?
Not
many.
anywhere near.
But
it just
the only ones who can go there are the ones who want diesel mechanics or the.
Right, but I'm just wondering to put them all together because that is another program.
Yeah.
So I just wanted, that does include where our kids are going.
I don't know the numbers for that.
Yeah.
So 57 will be there in the fall? Is that
And they have opened up a 10th grade program, 2 10th grade programs.
Well, they've opened it up to 10th graders because
Right,
they have space for safety.
And I did think that I emailed to you all a couple weeks ago, last month. OB students did really well in the Skills USA.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Anecdotally, Natalie, we've had the OB students have done well in those skills competitions.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious. How are our kids doing?
Yeah. So would guidance know that information, or would we have to wait for Stafford?
Would guidance know where our kids are going after graduation? I mean, I actually think the Stafford folks probably know exactly where the OV grads are going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
would they come and do a presentation about just our kids? I didn't think so.
Unlikely.
That's right. Okay.
They might hop on virtually in the fall.
Okay. Well, we'll see what we can find.
There's tons of different programs there, right? At Stafford?
Yes.
Yeah, they have.
Where could I go to find a list? Just Stafford.
On Stafford's website.
Yeah. If you go to Stafford Tech, you'll see all the stuff that they have.
So,
they have
auto body, automotive technology, construction technology, cosmetology, culinary arts, digital arts, electrical and plumbing, natural resources and forestry, health careers, human services, welding and metal fabrication, public safety, criminal justice, engineering, video communications. They started a program in phlebotomy. There's been talk about trying to do, I forget the license now, being able to drive trucks, sorry, I can't think of it. CDL licenses, yes. They've got all kinds of ideas for new programs if they can get the funding and they can get the teachers.
And most of the programs have a year 2 and a year 3 and a couple of different iterations of it. They are at 91% capacity for the fall. Again, we have 57 OB students there.
And we're the second highest number.
Next year, we are
right?
the second highest for next year.
As far as number of kids going from the 11.
And honestly, their wait list is pretty small, for what our students enrolled in. Electrical and plumbing has a pretty high wait list still. Welding and metal fabrication. We had fewer students who applied this year that were ineligible, so that's good news. And we had very few, I don't think we had any OB students withdraw an application for next year. So if they applied and they got in, they signed already, which is probably why we have 57.
So a question I have is, if they're on a wait list for Stafford, is it possible then to go to another program that might have room? No, that doesn't happen. I mean, I think that there are some limitations to access.
Well, there's definitely limitations to
Right?
access.
But meaning also that I think agreements that limit access, yes?
Well, we would have to be very careful about how we were to expand our program without impinging on Stafford and
Got it.
getting our heinies kicked.
And
I
we
know.
can't, and as far as transportation, we really can only transport to Rutland and to Middlebury. So we can't expand our geographic
Right.
area with any sort of ease at all. But I do think, Kevin brings up a really good point earlier. It's a lot about what's happening for 7th and 8th grade students and having the guidance counselors as well as the teachers really kind of being clear to students about here are your options that are not traditional. Stafford does have a road show. They have a middle school van, is it bus? It's truck, trailer? It's huge. And so they are trying to expand their outreach. I do know that Rutland Middle School did a pilot program this year and picked, I think it was 10 high-need students who were, and I mean high needs, like they weren't successful in the classroom, not necessarily high needs with regards to any sort of disability or social emotional needs. They just were not successful in the program. They did a 6-week rotation at Stafford, and all of those students have had a successful end of their year. And I think they're 8th graders. And so so Stafford, that was one of the things they talked about last week, would open it up to other middle schools to kind of do this pilot program with some, and that makes a big difference.
I will say that I think having that access to even an exposure to what it looks like may be what reaches kids, because I do know, I mean, I have of our kids, sometimes it is the ones who struggle the most that need those programs the most, yet have the hardest time getting in them. So.
And one of Devon's biggest goals for next year is the 7th and 8th grade
Right.
programs.
That's
so.
great.
I think that, the first choice numbers are higher in, I'll be careful and say almost every case, but I think possibly every case, so that the second choice applicants, unless they have a much harder chance to get into a program.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, well, let's see if we can pull something together about figuring out, if our kids are doing really well there, which I assume that they are, and what they're doing after school and yes?
And I just have a question, because I do know that we have personal plans, right, that they create.
PLPs.
To get into Stafford, you need a PLP.
But I guess what I'm wondering is, at least my experience with PLPs is that all teachers have a group of kids that they work with, but not all teachers are equally informed of all those options, And I'm just wondering about the training of the people who support the kids developing PLPs.
So they really, at OV, they really focus in on PLP development in middle school. If a student shows interest in Stafford, then the guidance counselors pick up really working with them to support it. To get into Stafford, again, to Kevin's point, it is not easy. Those kids have to work hard. And so especially if students had more opportunities to see what was an option, in the middle school, when they were doing it in 7th and 8th grade, it might be more meaningful to them, right? As they do their PLPs in 7th and 8th grade, it ends up being an exercise that they have to do as part of the middle school program. But if they knew you're doing the PLPs and, hey, if you want to look into CTE, this is your ticket, then that might also add some meaning there. But I think there is room to grow, not only with our programs, but with our guidance and partnering with Middlebury as well, Hannaford Career Center as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we'll put that on there somewhere. Okay.
Could also possibly have in the fall an OV Stafford student or two come and do a presentation about what they're working on. I mean, Stafford, Melissa or Kate might be willing to share, but I bet an OV student might be.
Okay. It's on the list. Okay, so thank you. Hawk Hill discussion. That's you.
You want to talk about it?
Oh, well, no, you know more about it than I do.
Yes, I do. I wanted to do a brief overview of Hawk Hill because my life situation, my life circumstances are such that I'm not going to be able to continue chairing the Hawk Hill Committee. So I want to do a brief overview. I don't know how many of you have read the management plan or understand what our responsibilities are for Hawk Hill. So I want to do a little bit of an overview on that. This is a map of the Hawk Hill conservation property that we own. Otter Valley is just off the map right here. This is Route 7 heading into Brandon. This is the triangle where, I don't know, what is it, Max?
McConnell Road?
McConnell Road.
Oh, I was going to say Nickerson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
scoots off
Sorry.
here.
Yeah.
So with OV being right here, there's a yellow line that is actually the top of the cliffs here behind OV. And it goes all around to the old Brandon Road and goes along the edge of the meadow up there, including a section that comes right down to the railroad tracks and then back up here where the cemetery, there's a cemetery with 1700s headstones on it. And there's the trail that comes back to OV. But this yellow border includes the property that is under the Hawk Hill Management Plan. And that plan was developed when the property was acquired from the Vermont Land Trust by the school board 20 years ago or more. And in that process of conserving that property, there was some guidelines about creating a management plan, and there were covenants that were included about development, about priorities, and those priorities include, managing the habitat, looking at invasive species, but really one of the main priority of securing this property in a conservation way was to preserve the archaeological resources that are up on the hill. The old Brandon Road is a municipal road, actually. It's owned by the town of Brandon. If I can see it coming into here, heading to the cemetery, and it peters out, but the trail continues back to Otter Valley. But it is formerly a Class 4 road. Now I believe on the Brandon maps it's just listed as a trail. But it is a section of property that's managed by the municipality of the town of Brandon, not the school board. And that runs through the middle of the property. So there needs to be collaboration with the town of Brandon.
But can I
Yes.
The road is maintained by the town, that's what you're saying?
It's not maintained because they threw it
What's
up.
it cost for?
But it's.
But there's an
owned.
easement.
It's a trail, it's not thrown up.
The trail is not thrown.
They abandoned it and it belongs to us.
Pardon me?
Thrown up means that it's no longer, they no longer have right to use it.
It's not a class 4 road.
Right.
They do have a right, my understanding is that
They have a right of way.
They have a 50-foot right, a 3-rod right-of-way along that road. So that is, that access and access to private property is through that road. But again, looking at there's a trail system that was developed largely from the Mooslamoo program. There are, Bill Powers is a regional historian who sits on the committee, has done a lot of research. There are some videos of his presentations about Hawk Hill, and also there's a quarry that's owned by OMUHS in there, the Prime Richmond Quarry. Historically, there's some real historical artifacts there of the former quarry. Bill did presentations, those were videotaped, and they're here in the library as part of a growing resource of Hawk Hill materials that are here in the library for student use or community use. So I can say that we have, as a committee, had contact with the state archaeologist last summer, and he agreed to oversee any projects that we undertook. If we were, one of the priorities was to actually develop archaeology in the schools program, and he would oversee some of those activities to make sure they're in keeping with state archaeology guidelines as well as our own covenants for the protection of those resources. Within the committee, we've had ongoing conversations. There are, I believe there's 8 members of the committee representing municipal, community members, historians, sportsmen, and such. And we've had many discussions about trying to achieve this balance between public use of the property and the preservation of this property. And you can imagine the polarity that might exist in terms of let's use this property and engage the community in using this property, and then that coming in conflict with the notion of preserving those historical resources and not digging up the ground, willy-nilly sorts of things. So that's why the state archaeologist idea. There's also Castleton State University has an archaeology program that's quite robust that would be wonderful to connect with as a resource for some of our students in the future. We chose not to pursue that topic, even though it is a priority, probably the priority on the management plan. We chose not to pursue that project last summer because of just the current state of affairs, and with coming out of the pandemic, issues that were going on in the school, changing in administration. There were a lot of factors, and it just wasn't the right time to start talking about a new program, given all the things that were going on. But that's out there for future thought. And if you haven't read the management plan, it's online. There's a Hawk Hill Committee button on our resources that you can access, and you can read through the management plan, and it's a board responsibility. So it's your responsibility. It's not my responsibility. I've been playing a role for you, but it is something that somebody's going to have to follow through on. One of the things that we did, and one of the priorities was to try and get a current or an updated map, topographical and other of the trail systems. The committee worked with Brandon Greenways in developing their, they were very active in developing ideas for a trail system around the greater Brandon area. And they wanted to include Hawk Hill, and they did do some walking of the trails, meeting with the historian, getting a lot of information about it. And in their, I believe their most recent flyer that was done a year or so ago, a fold-out brochure on the topic of hiking and trails around Brandon. It was a showcase map in the fold-out. So, you know, it's there and in the public eye as a resource in this area. So the other thing is that the Vermont Land Trust is still a partner in this management plan. If there's any activity that is related to disturbing the land or any development projects that might want to be taken, then we have to communicate with the land trust, and there has to be approval, a sign off from them that it's not violating any of the covenants that are within the management plan. So I'd be happy to spend time with anybody, but there's a binder with all that information, the management plan, and other related maps and reports and things like that. So I guess I'll stop there.
Kevin?
Bill Powers written down any of the stuff he knows about all the cellar holes for posterity?
Yes. There have been some trail maps posted out here. Where are we? Out here by the access, by the football field, by the goalpost. There's an access up there. There's a kiosk that the Moose Lamoon program made, and there were maps made available of the trail maps for the trails up there with a key that shows cellar hole sites and wells and things like that. And also, one of the things that Bill Powers did was, with the Greenways project, we had a couple of OV students that were working for the TV, PEG TV, and they filmed a walkabout with Bill Powers, talking about all these different sites that he was showing. So that's out there somewhere. But Bill, I know, has a lot of resources that he's collected, and I've had conversations with him about sending his files to us so that we can have them here in the library available.
Thanks.
Yeah, he's done the most work of anybody on this. Anything else?
Thank you. So we won't put anybody on the spot tonight, but I would like you all to think about if it's something that interests you or you would like to be the new Hawk Hill committee member.
What's the time?
Yeah, the time commitment is as much as you want to commit. I mean, it's endless. If you want it.
How often?
If you want it to meet. But typically, the committee has met about 4 times a year. Not a lot, but we typically meet a couple times in the spring, looking at any activities, any trail work, or, you know, do we need to get volunteers together? One of the things that we wanted to talk about in the future, again, was connecting with the elementary schools and finding out if there was a way that the elementary schools could develop a Hawk Hill Rangers Club or something, where they could visit it and get some basic information about it. 5th and 6th graders perhaps. Some of the schools do get out and hike in in field trip and that sort of thing. But it'd be really good if, for those elementary schools that are part of our district, it would be really good if they could take advantage of this resource. And there's access from the parking lot here at OV, and there's also access point from the end of Old Brandon Road, which is, it's a better access point given the time factor to see and actually participate in some of the sites that are there along Old Brandon Road. But you know, to get a bus up there, it's a little tricky. The town has indicated that they would support making a small parking area. It would help with their turnaround of their snowplow equipment at the end of that road, that sort of thing. That hasn't come to fruition yet. But that's in the management plan as a recommendation. There's a number of recommendations that we've been pursuing. But again, there's that balance of how much are we going to engage public access and how much are we going to focus on preservation of the archaeological resources. So that just has to be considered.
I was one of Derek's predecessors. I'm not sure how far along as a board representative in that, and we had the pleasure of rewriting the management plan. So that's done. This space is important to OVUU in large part because it is Moose No Moose classroom. That's where so much of our work goes on, and expanding it to grade school kids is a great idea. There's a lot of really cool stuff back there, so I wouldn't be afraid of it if anyone's thinking about it.
Yeah, no. In addition, Kevin, the committee did do a survey 2 years ago, I believe, of the teachers, all the teachers in the district. We wanted some feedback about their usage of this facility, and we discovered that there was a lot already. There was interest. There were several classroom teachers at Neshabie. There was several folks at Lothrop that used it. There was a lot of high school teachers that used it. The sciences are out there. There's water, there's beavers, there's all kinds of stuff on this side of the hill, which is OV property. But when you get up higher, you hit the management area, and all that. Not only early American, European development of this locale, but there is every indication that this was a very active area for Native American participation. There were a lot of artifacts that were taken from the area that are around Brandon. I've seen a few of them. They need, it would be nice for the high school to host some museum quality artifacts. And if their archaeological activities do begin at some point, it would, in my mind, it would be under the guise of the high school, and there is a lot of interest in going up there and finding artifacts. It's very bad practice to do that unless you're following the state archaeological guidelines about disturbing property. So, it's at risk. The property is at risk for vandalism, from people going up there with, metal detectors and digging and those kinds of stuff. And that's happened in the past, but to my knowledge, that's not currently happening. But we did have a proposal from someone to come and do that, and that's when we reflected on our management plan and said, what kind of guidance do we have on that? And it was very clear to everybody involved that we needed to engage with the state archaeologists to pursue that, so that it's done properly.
Other questions?
It's
Okay.
it's a great resource. It's a fabulous asset that the district has.
We will bring that back to our June 20th. I don't want to put anyone on the spot tonight, so think about it and come back on June 20th and think if maybe one of you want to take it over.
Sure, I'd be
Okay.
happy to meet with anybody to talk more about what we've been doing.
Would the committee be okay with a board representative that doesn't live in Brandon?
Sure.
Do you think
I mean,
that-
well, they'd have to.
Yeah.
It's just, well, not necessarily, I mean, you can be from Goshen or Sudbury, I mean, it just has to be a board member, so.
Right.
Doesn't matter
Okay,
that.
but I just wondered.
It belongs to the district.
Right.
It belongs to everybody in our district. It belongs to Pittsford, it belongs to Leicester, it belongs to Goshen. And so our student population or our families should benefit
Right,
from it.
right.
And that is outlined in it.
I would want to throw in, I think the opportunity to work with, even though it hasn't happened, or I don't know how far along it would be, but the Castleton Archaeology Program is a great idea. That program does have all kinds of great energy and leadership right now. They're full of projects. They started a house museum on campus. They've got all kinds of great things going on, and that would be an exciting opportunity for our students.
You mean Castleton University?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a great program it's local.
Okay. Any other questions for Derek? Okay. Okay, so, our annual work plan is all set. Everything has been, as you may remember, we are not having a June 6th meeting. We are switching everything to our June 20th meeting, so be prepared for a little bit of a longer meeting that night. But then I'll let you go for the summer. And while we're talking about that, you don't have to decide tonight, but by June 20th, I would like to come up with a date for our retreat. I know that people plan vacations in August. I try not to have anything in early August due to field days and because I don't want to come back that early as a board member, honestly. So be thinking about a date that works for everybody, and we'll plan on that on June 20th. Okay? All right. So, if there's nothing else to talk about tonight, and I don't think we need an executive session, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:46.
So moved.
We need to stay at least another 2 hours for something.
We're gonna do that on June 20th.
Derek, you could read the whole manual to
Yeah,
us.
ooh, no.
Yeah, but-
All right.
Let's
So
go.
you're, So all of those who wanna, say yay to that can leave. So thank you.